This week is extra special for my heart, for my soul, for so many reasons because it's my people that I'm talking to. They're the two people that have influenced my growth, my spiritual growth in the greatest kind of ways. It's through them that I came to the understanding of I create my own reality, and I am the common denominator in my life, and everything that happens external of me is me, and all of those things. And when I say me, I don't necessarily mean me as the Phoenix Yuana personality. Me as me, the gods. Anyway, the combination, the co-creative, the all of it. So I've learned that from them. And this week, I'm in conversation with them. This week, oh my god. We go into the quadrant theory that they're developing, that they've put together, that they're gonna walk people through, and I am super excited to also be part of it. So, in the meantime, here it is, Emma Scott, the Sage and the Dragon. This is not gonna be anything extra formal. It's just you and me guys talking about whatever comes to mind for you. So at this point in time, I'm thinking because you guys are doing your retreats and you're starting the Quadrant Theory course and all of that, I want to go on that path. But first, I want you guys to introduce yourselves because it doesn't matter what I say and what I do and whatever. Let's put it in the realms of what a normal person would say. That today my guests are Hollis and Scott Sunderland. Welcome and hello.
Normal person?
Normal
A,
person. It's
a
not
normal.
because this is never gonna be normal. It's just whatever, I'm just inviting people here so I don't talk to myself all the time.
That's
So there you
great.
go.
I love
Yes, there you go.
that. I love
So
that. Well, yes, I am formerly Emily Hollis. Oh gosh, who am I? I hate that. I'm not Em or Emily. I am an evolving consciousness, a being of light, a soul having a human experience, and hopefully taking along some people with me for the ride.
I love that. I love
I'm
that.
a remember, and I am hopefully a spark to help other people remember.
Well, thank you very much, sir. Your turn.
I am, or I play the character of Scott, and I don't know what I am. That's what I'm trying to figure out. That's what I have spent
Love that.
most of my life trying to figure out, trying to remember. I knew I did remember when in my, say, first 5 to 7 years, I definitely remembered. And then you forget because you're immersed in the environment, and that environment is the human environment, right? So I guess the first thing for me was, okay, so am I this human, this character, this person? And where does that stop and start? And now learning, am I insane for thinking this?
I can say
Because
yes to that for
obviously
now.
I am in this suit, right? So I think that's what it is, similar to you. It's really remembering what we are and what exists out there. Because for me, it was like, okay, so I know the double slit experiment, and that double slit experiment exists in me. So if I believe the double slit experiment, then not only is this, countertop and everything, TV, coffee pot behind me, doesn't exist in an actual environment outside of me. It's only me because I see it. Well, then what is this? What is this fleshy thing? Right?
There you go.
Is that real, an environment outside of me, or is this just inside of me? And this is how I see her. And then, of course, what are you? So I think I'm really realizing that, not saying that this doesn't exist, this is a ball of energy, of light, that I have put my own interpretation on. I want her to look this certain way. I want her to talk with a certain tone. I want her to do certain things that fit
Who's
into,
the I that you're referring to?
well, I guess that's a great question. I think I am the same thing. So Scott is the same thing. That interprets you, it interprets Scott. So who's that? It's the observer. And ultimately, the thing that we've prayed to forever and we've obeyed forever is God, whatever form that takes. Allah, universe, whoever else.
Baby Jesus and all the
Baby
Jesuses.
Jesus, all Jesus. It is that thing that we think is outside of us, which is not true. It is who you are. It is who Scott ultimately is. He's just a little side struct. Scott is just a side struct of this God that all knowing and all powerful. And that's for you too. And I'm just a little ball of energy in your little energetic world, energetic environment. Right? And then it comes down into matter, where things then have a texture, they have a smell, they have a feeling, they have, right?
Yeah. So what is the ball of light?
Ball of light is just energy. And I think we use the same balls of light. And
would you say a ball of light is a soul?
Very well could be. It could be a soul in your soul. It could be an energetic molecule in your energetic.
I love how this part of your self that sits next to you is asking you the questions as much as she knows the answer. It's like, I love the interaction between you two, because it's like she's a part of you, like you're describing, right? So she's just asking the questions that you're asking yourself. So it's cool to see the interaction.
Well, it's crazy. I mean, when you really think about it, and I owned a house, I owned a boat, I lived in an apartment in Fort Myers, Florida. Well, does Fort Myers, Florida exist? Not now. Not for me, because I don't see that anymore. It's not in my periphery. I can't see it. I can't smell it. I can't touch it. I can't taste it. I can remember it. I have a memory of what that place looked like. I have a memory of building a house.
You know what's really cool about that?
Where is that now? So in the ultimate equation, just because I can't see it, I believe it is somewhere out there. But is it really?
And the really cool thing about that is a few years ago, that was way far for people to get. Even it's so interesting to me, because even people in the spiritual community will say, so the ones that tend to be right-brained, right? The ones that tend to believe in the woo-woo, even those ones, when he would say this, that would be too far for them. Like, okay, I believe in spirit and spirits, but I don't somehow believe that this is an illusion and that my house isn't there if I don't see it. So even that was like really far. But I think, when he would tell me that when we first met, I'm like, yeah, I get it. Okay, whatever. Like,
I don't think you ever can get.
But right. But how does that apply to me? Right?
Yeah.
Ultimately, like, okay, who cares? It's a great idea, but how does that make my life?
How do I use it in my day-to-day life, right?
Yeah. So the really cool thing is now, which is what I would say what drives me, what's my passion or something, a subject that excites me, is science and spirituality meeting, right? Because without the science, spiritual ideas are great. How is that going to help me, right? But without the spirit and only the science, then you're stuck. You have to move things matter to matter. And there's a lot that's unanswered. There's a lot of questions people ask that are unanswered only by science. So eventually we'll take this into the quadrant theory, but why the quadrant theory is I'm so passionate about it is because I've been so passionate about the intersection of those two things. Because certainly one can't exist without the other, because if you study science far enough, it will always take you to the spiritual. And if you study spiritual, it's going to take you to the science. So the two are commingled. And now, so I listen to a lot of Don Hoffman, who I believe is an amazing example of those two things coming together, because he can talk some very deep spiritual wisdom, but always will bring it back to the science too, and the measuring and the testing. And so when he says that, you now have scientific experiments, full on science, quantum theory, that is hoping to prove scientifically that house does not exist unless there is an observer observing it. What are these energetic balls? He calls them conscious agents. I'll call them soul, right? It doesn't matter
I call them little balls of light.
Little balls of light doesn't really matter. You know, little balls of light is what Jill Bolte Taylor refers to.
Absolutely, because
right?
she is absolutely 100% correct. So let me ask you, where does Don Hoffman exist?
In me.
Yeah, because where is he?
Sure.
Where is all his theories? Where do they exist?
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
Where does gigs
the
exist?
reason why I like that is because he'll tell someone that, right? But that even that is so far to the mind for the mind to stretch that they can't go that far. So what's really brilliant about the two of us together is like he's going to challenge you to think well beyond, and I'm going to bring it back to the tangible so that you have both of those things, so that you have this idea of the end all be all. But then okay, why does that matter to me?
You know what I remember?
Yeah.
I remember this one time. It was in a Dr. Joe 4-day workshop in Cabo, where we really first, kind of got together. And I remember sitting there watching this video that Dr. Joe was showing, and I was sitting next to this guy from, I don't know, UK or Ireland or whatever. And it had a speaker underneath a like a tambourine, right? Kind of like a
cymatics.
Yep.
In your world, in your I just call it a tambourine. So
it's called cymatics.
What ifs? Anyway, this skin where they put like sand on it, top of it, and the speakers underneath it. And when they played a certain frequency, it made a shape like, like a snowflake.
Pattern. Yeah. Sorry.
Geometric pattern, that's your reality. Snowflake is my reality. So like a snowflake. And then as they changed the sound or the frequency, they lowered the frequency, it turned into another one. And it was perfect. There wasn't a grain of sand out of place. It was this perfect mandala. And you're like, oh my God. And I remember the guy sitting next to me and he goes, oh my God, that's fascinating. That is absolutely fascinating. There's something to this. And I said, but who's looking at it? You are. You're seeing that because you want to believe that you are more than you are. And think about that. We think this is happening outside of us. We think this is happening in a world that we exist in instead of it existing in us. So the big, the thing that you'll hear me say is being paralyzed, living in this bed, however many years ago, was this voice that came like it was there at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. It said, what if you don't exist in this world? What if that world just exists in you? Your eyes aren't looking out into it. Your eyes are looking back into it. And that was the defining moment for me. Right. What if? And maybe that moment, that voice was mine. Maybe that voice was God, baby Jesus, coming down from the heavens. But in reality, it was me.
But what do you mean when you say me?
It was who I ultimately am. It was God, the observer, but I am God, the observer. I am attached to it. I am living it. It is in my world. I am just a figment of its personality, of its soul, of what it definally is. So I think that's back to the question. That is what I am trying to find, my way home. Yeah. And my way home isn't to find out that I am the observer. It's to know that I am the observer and I can be in this suit. And when this suit is gone, I'll pick another suit. I'll be in another one and I'll start all over again. And that suit will be better than this suit because, you never trade in a car to get a shittier car. that doesn't make sense. I'm going to trade in this car for a better car,
It can only
a
go
car
up.
that has less mileage, that it has a better color, right? So I think ultimately that's what we are after. We want to know. I'm so happy to go through and see the magic that I had seen yesterday. You know, what doing this hike in South Dakota. I don't know where South Dakota is. I never experienced South Dakota until a couple of years ago, and we liked it so much we decided to come back. But ultimately, it is the feeling that we get, and then this feeling feels so good. You become grateful for what you're seeing. And then what happens when you become grateful? More of it shows itself. So what was beautiful last time is even more beautiful this time. And I think ultimately we want to know all this fear that I have of running out of money, running out of food, losing my house, you know, dying, whatever. What if we can let go of them one bit at a time to ultimately know, wait a minute, maybe death isn't a bad thing. Maybe death is just me, the God, the soul, the observer, trading in this car, Scott, for a new car, whoever. I don't know what that is yet, because ultimately I have done that before, probably many, 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 many times. So when I was killed in a war, that was actually the birth of a new of my God, of who the observer, of the soul that I ultimately am. I am just a cell in a body, right? The body is made up of trillions of cells. I'm just a cell of this being, whatever this being is. And chances are you are a soul. You are a cell that is a part of that soul. She is a cell that is part of that soul, of that body, of that being. We all are. Everyone that you interact with is just another part of you. And yet we fight with each other. So think about that. When a body fights with itself, when one cell fights with another cell, well, I don't like what you just did. I don't like what you just said. What happens? The body becomes diseased.
Yeah.
Because it's dis-ease between the cells. So think about that.
It's so interesting because see, you're touching on that thing of we're all a cell in a body, and this has helped me tremendously in understanding that thing, because I could never understand how can I be one but also be me. How can I see you guys over there but also be me, but also be God and have that sparkle inside of me? And that cell information, that's the one that kind of helped me. Okay, if I see myself as a cell, and more recently, since I've seen this little clip that I spoke about before of these people that were drugged, you know, and I wanted to run away. I wanted to scroll away from it, not to look at it. And then I thought, oh my God, what am I running away from here? What do I not want to look at? Because it seemed like so much darkness, you know, it seemed like, oh my God, this is the way it was depicted. It was like one of the worst things that anybody could ever do. And I thought, if I see them as that God particle, you know, would I still have that judgment onto them? Because that's what tends to happen. It's like, oh my God, that's bad. It's a bad thing, you know, it's not something that is nice to people's view or whatever. So I thought I'm just gonna sit and watch and feel in the discomfort of it, because that's what it brought up inside of me. I'm like, this is very uncomfortable. And lately, you guys know, it's so dark. It's like, it's so fucking dark. Like all the, and you mentioned all the fears there, Scott, about fear of this, fear and that, fear of the other. It feels like everything right now, all the fears that I could possibly think of, they're all coming up. Oh yeah, I was all the fears, you know, it's like all the fears and all the feelings that are attached to those, you know, they're all coming to the surface. And it's like, you know, when you kind of feel like you've worked some of them, but you've worked them at this level. Now it's like, let's go a bit deeper. Let's go a bit deeper. That's what it feels like. Because the more we go up, the more we go down. And I did see this thing Bashar was describing that I kind of love. And it's the same level analogy that you make, Scott, with level up. And when you're down, you're not going all the way down. You're going to the level that you kind of got up. He describes it as a wave that goes.
Yeah.
It goes up and down, but it goes up constantly.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
the same. It feels like that. Like I'm going up and down, but I can tell that it's up.
Yeah.
And I can tell that it's down, but it's
Yeah.
I
dark.
think that for me, in my experience, and this is just my experience, I don't know if it's true, but it seems as though the deeper and darker I'm willing to go, the higher up I'm able to
Well, it's
go.
because the rubber band gets stretched
Mhm.
more, right?
Mhm.
It's interesting because if you think about this, and let's put it into a real world thing that we all can understand, okay? To understand, right? So we all know what a lion is. A lion is king of the jungle. Nothing can beat the lion in the jungle by itself, right? Hyenas can, if there's 20 of them and they trap it by itself, maybe they could, ultimately take down the lion. Chances are the lion's going to take a bunch of them out with it, but it's the only way that this can happen. But what if there was a lion that didn't know he was a lion? What if that lion didn't have a mother or a father there to teach it that it's a lion? So what if this lion gets separated at birth and it just is out there roaming around? It doesn't know that it's a lion. And suddenly there's a little chipmunk that runs across its path and it freezes and it's just like, oh my God, don't touch me. Don't come near me because I don't want that chipmunk to hurt me. And then it goes on and it learns to eat grass and it learns to find these, this food along the way that maybe other lions killed, and it eats that. And suddenly when something moves out there, it's terrified because it's like, holy shit, that's going to hurt me out there. I could get hurt out there because there's all these deer out there. I see them, but there's so many they could hurt me. So I need to hide. And ultimately one day it comes across another pride of lions and they say, yo, what's your name? Come on in. We're going to talk. And they sitting around and suddenly this chipmunk runs across and one of the lions jumps on the chipmunk and eats it. And the lion's stunned because it's like, I've been terrified of those for the last 5 years. How did you just do that? What do you mean? I'm a lion. We are remembering that we're lions. And we are remembering that the things that we are fearful do not exist if we are not fearful of them. So if you were scared of getting this made up flu, then it's going to be something for you. Your body is going to react to it because suddenly your body forgets that it's a lion and all the cells are now trembling but they said, if I get this, I'm going to die. And they said, if I get this, I'm contagious and I'm going to give it to her, someone I love, and I don't want to impose any harm on. So now I am just going to stay frozen and forget that I'm a fucking lion. I am going to let this thought dictate what I do, how I feel, all the things. And if you decide that this doesn't matter to you, and if you are not afraid of that, now I am going to disagree with you and we are going to fight.
Yeah.
We have forgotten that we are all the same organism. We are all the different cells in a body, right? And when the leg cell, one of the cells in the leg fights with one of the cells in the arm, we have disease.
And I think that to bring your analogy again to a very tangible thing in our life,
I thought that was pretty
brilliant analogy. And to me, the application of that seems to be the moment that we stop running from the chipmunk and face the fear is when we start to remember that instead of running, the moment we decide, I just did a video on this yesterday. It's like in our journeys, just in life, even if you're not on a path of growth or remembering, it's like we come up to these precipices of our lives, these moments that we decide either I'm not jumping, it's too scary, can't do it, I'm going to turn around and go back. There's those moments. Everybody knows those moments in their life. They've come to that precipice. We've come to many precipices in our journeys. Many times I've turned and ran away and went, that chipmunk's too scary. Not going to do it today. There's too many deer. Not going to do it today. Totally honor those times in my life that I decided it. And then there's those times that you came to the precipice and you said, I've turned around so many goddamn times. I'm tired of that chipmunk ruling me. I'm going to jump off this cliff and I'm going to see what happens when I jump off.
Mm.
And I'm going to face that. You know, we talk about courage, but to me, that really, courage is such a physical experience for me, because it's physically experiencing all the chemicals that are going through your body when you're in that fear state. When that chipmunk's running in front of you, it's literally like chemical reactions happening in your body. And when your consciousness can decide to be higher than those chemicals and go, nope, not today, not today, Satan, right? Like, I am jumping today. I am not, because in that jumping, every single time we jump off that precipice, every single time we turn around and face that chipmunk or that deer, we remember a little bit more.
A little bit.
It doesn't happen all of a sudden in one day. Oh my God, I'm God.
Yeah.
That's it.
No, it's stair steps, right? So to get out of the cave, you have to take the steps to get out of the cave. And every step you can see a little bit more light, little bit more light, little bit. And it's so small, right? But as you move towards it, it's natural to understand that if there's a light up there, every time you take a step towards it, 1 foot closer to it, that light is incrementally going to get bigger. But you don't notice it at each step. Right? And then maybe you make a step and it kind of turns around a rock that blocks that light out a little bit more. And then we fall back and we say, see, I'm not getting any better. I'm not getting, you're still moving towards the light. You just can't see it in that moment because there's an obstruction. But then as we keep walking, suddenly the light really shines. And it's that moment that you realize, I can't turn back from this. There's something up there and I need to keep climbing. I don't care what the voices say behind me anymore, because that is my proof. I think that's where we are. We have gotten to this place that whatever this voice is behind us that says, well, that's irresponsible, that's ridiculous, that's not true, suddenly there's a percentage, right? Suddenly those voices turn to 40%, and that light turns to 60%, and you keep moving towards it. And then that voices get further and further and further back. But in the beginning, it took going against those voices when those voices were 90%. That's where the courage is, because you say, I know there is something up there, and I need to start taking these steps to get to it. What is that knowing? Is it a remembering that maybe Scott doesn't have that memory, and maybe the soul is saying, come this way? And there's
I gotta ask you,
right?
I gotta ask you, do you have like a practical example? Because I'm thinking of a conversation, of course, I had today about, you know, when you're kind of at the beginning, like when you said the voices are 90% louder in your head, and let's say you have these thoughts of taking your life, right? Because the panic attacks become too big and the memories are too strong and it just takes over you. What would you say, like, for people that are going through things like that, you know, when it's right in your face, like right in your face?
Example. It just happened to me a few days ago, literally. This, like, exactly what you're speaking of happened to me a few days ago.
Can you share?
If I share that, and then maybe you share your
example. Sure, absolutely.
A very real, tangible, I mean, I just came face to face with this. We just put on a retreat, and I'll add that I think that these moments of incredible darkness and fear, to the point I may take my own life, as hard as those are, I really think those are precipice moments. Like, those are actually the moments that can lead us to our biggest freedom. We've always looked at them as something to run away from, right? And avoid. But so number one, first step is, can I look at this moment as actually a portal to my deeper awakening? I think that's the first step, is knowing that. And so the story I'm going to share with you, the example I'm going to share with you, I already knew that, right? So I already I've done enough inner work on myself in the last 7 years to know when these moments arise, it's a choice point. Like, there's a choice in this moment to go, I believe that this is actually the portal to a greater awakening. So I think that's the first step. We just put on our third retreat, ketamine assisted breathwork retreat, which for both of us, I think we could agree that these retreats have been not only, you know, watching the magic of what unfolds for people, but for our own soul's mission and purpose, this feels the most aligned. You know, this is an awakening for us in this process. And so we just came off of amazing highs, right? Guiding people. So, you know, talk about the level up. It was like, I was downloading so much light into my body, which sounds so crazy and woo-woo, but I know it as a physical personal experience in my own psyche, body, mind, whatever. And of course it ended, not many people know this, it ended with, I had a massive release in my body as we were setting up our final ceremony, closing ceremony. No one knew because they were out of the room. So in that, my body brought up, more light comes in, more darkness has to be released. And so that precipice moment turned into 2 days later, waking up in the morning and having an extreme panic, fear, insecurity around money. We're launching this new program. And so it was just like a perfect, all the perfect ingredients for a deep, 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 dark night of the soul. And with this panic feeling came this fear. And the story is, financially, we're not going to be able to keep doing this. Like, we're going to run out of money, right? That's the story in my mind. Nobody's going to sign up. We're going to run out of money. How do we keep doing this? How do we keep helping people without having money? How are we going to live, right? The ultimate fear.
Yeah.
And it presented itself as that in my meditation. And instead of going, you know, so the old self and maybe someone in the situation would go, okay, how can I figure out something on the outside to fix this feeling, right? That's what we do as a human species. How do I manipulate my reality on the outside so that this fear can go away? That's the normal path of it. Somebody that's on the brink of, I can't live anymore because my outside circumstances aren't changing. And if they aren't changing, I need to take my own life because I can't take this, right? The one thing I knew, as I talked about, was no, like, I am not going to that story anymore, because if I go into that story and if I go in to start taking action to avoid this feeling, the feeling that's driving it, the fear that's driving it isn't actually going away. It's being covered up and it won't go away. And then it may go away for a minute if I do some things on the outside, but ultimately those things on the outside are going to return because I haven't faced the darkness inside of me, the actual fear inside of me. So what I did, the whole meditation was just be with it. Like, I was like, okay, I'm not going to leave this fear. I'm not going to try to do something on the outside. As the day progressed, I could feel that panic, that, oh my God, it's going to overtake me, right? Because that's ultimately what we're scared of, is this darkness will overtake me. And then what will happen? I will die. I will die. So might as well take my own life, right? Because there's no way out. And so as the day progressed, I didn't do anything. I sat, we had a driving day. Then I sat and I watched Disney movies. And then we were meeting our oldest son where he lived, and he said, I'm going to go have dinner with him. And I said, I'm not, I'm going to stay here and sit with this feeling. So all day, it's like, I'm just present with it. I'm not trying to avoid it. I'm just present with it as my voice goes out. He left, watched some movies, go to lay down in bed. And when I go to lay down in bed, there is an inner knowing that I should do a meditation, and I don't want to. Everything in my body, mind, soul is like, nope, 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 we're not doing that. But there is a stubbornness in me, and that stubbornness comes in very handy in these moments when I can turn that stubbornness inwards and not outwards, when I can be stubborn to my own small self that wants to run. There is a stubborn side of me that's like, I refuse to be controlled even by myself. I don't even want to be controlled by my own ego. And I knew that's what was happening, was some dark, the deepest, darkest fears of not just me, but as a collective ego, right? Going head first into the darkness. And in the moment I turned the meditation on, I started sobbing. And this isn't just like a crying. It's like a sobbing that's coming from, I don't know, generations of dark. And it was dark. And when I say dark, what I mean by dark is thoughts of, am I going to just go slit my wrist right now? Literally, like, I'm scared I might go take my life right now because I can't handle this pain
Mhm.
that is so deep within my body, the darkness of being lost in darkness for forever. But I kept, and I was screaming things out loud, like, God help me, please, God help me. I can't do this. I can't do this anymore. Please help. The pain is too much, and that's when I've been in those moments, as a teenager. I tried to take my life twice. So I know those moments of desperation of like, I can't do this anymore. And that's exactly how it felt. But I think I had built up enough of the other voice that he talks about to have it be, as I'm experiencing this visceral, physical, mental, emotional depths of my darkness, a voice said to me, no matter what, the deepest that you're willing to go into the dark, there's always going to be light, because the light is the only truth. Darkness isn't the truth, the light is. But you have to be willing to go to the depths of that darkness. And I had never gone to this depth before. This was terrifying. And I had thoughts of, should I call people? Should I call this person? Should I call this person? It was like, no, just be present. Just be present in this and allow this to move through you. And so when I say, what is a practical way for somebody that's about to commit suicide, it's hard to explain in words, but the best way I can say is, if you can sit with that fear, it's literally like an internal process where you're turning around and being present with it, instead of trying to like, oh God, please something change. It's like, no, nothing's going to change out there. And in fact, I don't want anything to change out there. Not in this moment, because it would win and it would continue to rule me. But if I can have nothing change out there, and if I can be in this, and they talk about internal alchemy and transmutation, that's what it felt like internally in my body. A fire is burning in my body. I can feel it burning alive. But what it's burning is all that dense darkness. That's what it's burning. It's burning the illusion of darkness. It's burning the illusion that I am not God, a soul. But and so I had to be with it for hours. And it was, in the moments, very scary, and in the after effect, followed by yesterday, we're walking in nature, and I am for about 3 minutes in complete ecstatic bliss. And when I tell people that, once again, you won't understand,
because you don't feel it,
because it's a frequency that I can't understand as I'm sitting here talking to you about right now. It's the other end of the spectrum. It's my heart being ripped open, and a voice saying, this is who you really are.
It's standing on top of the steps.
It's
that's what you had that moment.
It was pure. It was pure. Everything that actually is truth in my body happening. And in that moment, you see beyond the veil of illusion. You see it, you feel it, you know it.
And beyond, you see beyond the illusion of fear, right?
You see beyond the illusion of fear.
So when we say top of the steps moment, you can look at it in two different things. I'll tell you a story, but also tell you what that is. Standing on top of the steps is, you're at the top of the step, the last step, and you are the light. You are the light at that point. You came out of the hole, and now you're standing up. And the real life story for Scott was standing on the top of the steps. We were having a conversation. She was in the bathroom. I was at top of the steps talking, and suddenly this feeling came over of no fear. There was nothing to be scared of. I was just full all in the light. I had that moment. So that story, what she just told, think about how it relates to the lion, right? The lion is seeing this other lion, which he says I'm just like him, but I've never seen me. I can see that I'm bigger than this chipmunk, but still, I don't know what other powers that thing has. But that lion jumped on that chipmunk like it was nothing. But there comes a moment where that lion has to actually make the move. It actually has to come against the fear that it has lived its entire life. There's this thing that's going to hurt me. And now I saw something like me, not be scared of that. In fact, eat it for food. So now I'm hungry. I need to eat. I've seen the proof. but I've never done it. So now I need to actually put the body in motion to go and perform this act when my mind is screaming, that thing is going to eat you, you not eat it. I saw this. It really sums up so much for this journey. We don't know that there is something out there that we can fully trust in directing us in our life, so we're not the ones doing it, right? We feel, well, Scott needs to do this, 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 and this for him to live the life that he wants, right? We have to figure out how to trust this thing that we cannot see. Sometimes we can feel, but we cannot kinetically touch. We can't see it. We can't hear it. As we get closer, maybe it becomes more believable, but ultimately, is that who we are, that soul, that God? Now, religion does it by saying, well, if you pray, because I'm your priest and you've been taught to believe me in the things that I'm going to teach you and tell you, there is a God out there. All you need to do is pray.
Why you go
God.
talk shit about your neighbors?
Well, you
just come to church and pray and you're saved, right? No actual internal alchemy.
Not once did I interrupt your conversation. So that priest is telling you, you know, if you believe in God, God will come. He will grant you miracles. He's this magical deity in the sky that you cannot see. As long as you pray to him and you put money in the offering basket, we're great, right? So if you think about that, I just saw this. It's such a great and brilliant analogy. When you get on a plane, you get on the plane and trust that the pilot is going to get you where you want to go. And you have a vision of where that is, right? I've never been to Florida, but I've seen pictures and postcards and videos of what Florida is like. So now I've imprinted my mind of what this place is going to be like. And now I'm imagining what it's going to feel like. What's it going to smell like? There's tons of flowers I see. So obviously it's going to have this bouquet of aroma that is just going to be the most beautiful experience. So I'm going to get on this plane. And I heard the planes crash. I've heard that pilots come drunk. I know, but I'm going to trust it because the reward is going to be bigger than the risk. And you get on this plane. Now you can try to understand what and know who this pilot is, because he might have a drunken bender with his son the night before, like I did while she was going through all of this, right? He may have had that. He may be so angry and so depressed because of his relationship is falling apart. He may just say, nah, fuck it, and just let go of the yoke and let the fucking plane crash, right? And what about the plane? How old is it? What was the last time it had all its maintenance done? When this little nut that controls everything was tightened to make sure that it was never... But what about the engine? And you can sit there and try to reverse engineer the plane, the pilot, the engines, everything, but we don't. We get on that plane because everybody else is getting on it. Now imagine one of the first 5 people that got on that plane. You're going to get on that thing? Seriously? Wilbur Wright, you're going to get on. You're going to tell me that you're going to be okay. You're going to go in the sky and you're going to land safely?
I still don't like going in that
I mean,
thing,
are you
so.
serious, dude? And he's like, I'm going to prove it. And he does it. And then he says, you know what? I believe in this so much. I'm going to take my son, my world up, my wife, everybody that I hold dear, I'm going to put in this plane and I'm going to fly them up and I'm going to land them safely. And then you're saying, well, surely this guy, this freaking Wilbur, he's willing to do this with all the things. Maybe I should trust that. That's where we are. We are finally getting on this plane. We are finally willingly going through the ticket agent, through the security, getting on everything that's saying, don't do this. You got to pay money. You got to, get checked out. People are going to check your body, your cavities, to make sure you're not holding anything. And God forbid, if somebody comes through with something, we're going down. But you're willing to do that because you now know what a flower in Florida smells like in your imagination. And now you want to experience it. So now you're willing to trust this thing and get on it. And I think that's where we are as a community. as ourselves, we're willing to hand over the reins to something. So when I say, I don't have any more money, the money's gone. I am struggling here, but I am going to hand over and I am going to get on this plane. I am going to go and jump on this chipmunk, and it's going to be either me or him.
Are you
And
talking to me directly
if it's
now?
me, if it's me, then I know, oh my God, wow, the
Oh my God.
courage it took to jump on that thing that I had been so terrified all this time.
But I think that's the important part that I want to say here about that, because once again, kind of coming back, I know we haven't been able to cover it yet, but the quadrant theory and
We'll not get that till hour 8.
and blending the two worlds. What I've discovered in my journey is that, you know, and this goes back to the 4 levels of consciousness, which again fits in the quadrant theory perfectly. It's mapped in the quadrants perfectly. Is, you know, as you said, we're beginning to trust, right? But in the spiritual community, sometimes that can tend to go, well, I'm just going to meditate all day and things will just come to me, right? I'm going to get that good. And they don't jump on the chipmunk. They just think to themselves, well, I am a lion. I am a lion. I'm not going to actually jump on the chipmunk. I'm just going to stay right here and say I am a lion, right? So I don't have to actually do anything scary. Courage, right?
100%.
So I think where the quadrant theory and the science and spirituality really comes into balance is that we are living a 3-dimensional experience. We are not the 3-dimensional experience, but we are living one. And so that means that what we experience as our beliefs will be true for us, right? In a 3-dimensional space, there are physics and laws and things that happen, right? As we begin to remember, we can sort of break those, but nobody that I know of in this 3-dimensional space is a master. I'm talking Jesus master, right? That can actually influence matter in real time, right?
I don't know.
So-
I would disagree with that. I think you're doing it all the time, every millisecond.
If you believed that, you would never have a fear of losing money. And I know for a matter of fact, living with you, you do.
Well, yeah, for sure. Right. Well, there is that. Well, okay. So
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Kinda,
Like, I
yes.
can know that, but
Yeah.
that's not,
yeah.
this can know she
Yeah.
is
Right,
God,
but to
she's
believe.
experiencing
It's a belief.
not having
It's
money right now.
It's the belief of it.
That's why I even said, are you talking directly to me? Because it's that I feel like I have been in the part where you're describing, like, I'm just going to sit here and meditate, you know, for a while. And
Yeah.
because I don't know, I don't have any direction. It feels like I have no direction whatsoever.
But here's the thing. What I'm trying to say with that is that what I've realized now, once you move through the quadrants and through the levels of consciousness, that you know you are, and so when you take action, it is actually aligned with that thing you know you are. So now, it doesn't mean I don't take action. It doesn't mean I don't turn around and jump.
Right.
And I may have no idea if that action is in the right direction. But I have to meet that level of consciousness halfway, right? I can't sit in the room and meditate. I have to go, I got to jump on this chipmunk, right? Like, and maybe jumping isn't the right thing. I don't know, but I won't know until I
do that.
jump. But I can jump with faith.
Yes. Well,
That's the difference.
Because, you know, the faith and the courage is knowledge.
Yeah.
So the more you know, the more you experience. So with a lion, he didn't know any of this until he saw another lion. And then that other lion took it one step further when that other lion said, what the fuck's wrong with you? You're a lion. I don't know what that means.
Yeah, right.
I don't know what that means.
So many times.
What does that mean? I'm a
you
lion.
are more powerful than you know. And they're like, what do you mean?
What do you mean I'm more powerful than you know? And then the other lion, let's call it Ray. Ray says, you're a lion.
Yeah.
You look just like, do you see me? You look just like me. Okay. I can see my paws and they do match you. I know size-wise, I'm about your size. Okay, so now Ray says, okay, so now I'm going to show you what a lion can do. You've been terrified of that chipmunk? Let's go fucking get him. I'm going to go get him. And not only am I going to go after that chipmunk, you know that herd of deer out there that you've been hiding from for the last 5 years of your life? I'm going to fucking go out there and I'm going to rip 2 of them down. I'm going to eat them right in front of you. That's what I'm going to do. And you know why I'm going to do that? Because that's what you can do. And then you watch, this lion watches Ray go out there and do that. And suddenly that's knowledge to him. I saw this happen. Now I have the courage that maybe, just maybe, I could do that. It springs into action because what happens is this feeling that comes up through the lion in a minute, it remembers who it is for a second, and the body makes a move, an instinctual move of something moved, it moved, bam, I go right for it. He didn't think about it.
Yeah.
The lion for the last 5 years has been thinking, I can't do that, I can't do that, until this thing got switched and instinct took over and it went for it. It just went. Suddenly it's running and it's just like, it can feel like in its mouth starts to salivate. He can feel this energy running through and his paws are moving in such a way. He never felt this before. And suddenly he jumps. He never even said the jump. His mind never thought to jump. His body goes and does it, and it lands on top of this deer, and it's hitting it, and it's choking it. And as it's happening, the mind comes back online, and it says, what's happening right now? What just transpired? And that is exactly where we are as a human construct, because as you're growing, humanity grows. As I grow, humanity grows. For years, I watched government through, my peers that I watched, government took from them. And then they started to take from me and take from me and take from me. And I was just like, fuck this. Why are we all standing up for this? And it's wild to me now as I watch government fall. I watch this construct of these bullies that suddenly are getting older and frailer. And suddenly I'm the one who's standing there and just say, I'm not going to allow you to dictate how I feel anymore. And then she starts to have that, and you start to have that. And suddenly, wait, I've been free all along. I've been a lion all along. It is this thought that you rule over me. And man, I woke up. And this is, we hear the awakening. And they're just the terms that are out there that this voice is saying, come this way. You're heading up from the cave to the light. You're just in this dark spot right now. But as soon as you get around that corner, the light is going to fucking hit you. And at first, you're not going to be able to see because you're going to be blinded. It's going to be uncomfortable because your eyes have to dilate to the light that's coming in. Your body has to dilate to the light that's coming in. And you're like, oh my God, wow, that's too bright. And you turn away and you look back into the darkness. And then you're like, but that's not comfortable either. I have to regulate. So what if you knew for sure that light you have seen before, you've been in before, you have basked in it, and this voice when you were in your darkest, lowest point of that hole reminded you, this is who you are up here. You've been in this, you've basked in this. Don't you remember being up here? Wait a minute, my body just had that reaction, like the lion jumping on the deer. And I just had this instinctual moment. That was the moment you had when we were walking yesterday. That was the moment I had when I was on the top of the steps. And then we fall back and we say, I got to get up closer to that again. I want to feel it. That felt amazing to me. That is where Quadrant Theory comes in. That, no, not that. That is the Quadrant. That is where Quadrant Theory comes in. Well, I'm just saying, there's probably going to be
because in my head, I don't care how it goes.
Exactly.
I just love you guys talking.
So again, I see this being, cut up into several things because it's a flowing conversation, and that's what happens, right?
Jonathan Livingston Seagull, like honestly, when you were describing the lion, I'm like, and of course I've got it right there on my bedside table, because it's like, oh my God, that idea, because this is what it felt like for me today, that jumping moment of, because of course the fear, this is the biggest one that I feel like I'm working with right now, of trusting and money. Money.
Trusting the pilot.
And what is the money? Because what is the money? Because it's not the money, just like you said, Em, right? Not the money. It's never the money. And of course, it's being reflected outside of me with the amount of value that I put onto myself, and how do I word this? Because it's been reflected in a way that really slapped me in the face of, oh my God, this is how I treat myself. when
Yes.
somebody else outside of me is like treating me in a way that I'm like, oh my God, this is very interesting. This is how I treat myself. I am actually thinking that if I don't have money, I don't have value, because that was what came out of that, you know. I don't have money, I don't have value, and I need to be submissive and listen to whoever's dominant, you know. That's what's going on. And I'm like, oh my God, what is happening right here? You know, just with that moment when you just zoom out and you can see it from somewhere else, it's like, oh fuck. You know, just a realization of here it is and here is what I'm doing. And it had to get this big for me to realize what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it is true. That's the only way to really know, is if you are so much in fear. It comes to the point which becomes more uncomfortable, not moving, staying at the bottom of the hole, or starting to climb, right? And maybe the voice at the top of the hole, the light, is screaming at you so hard that eventually it starts the first step, right? It begets the first step. You take that first step into towards the light. Now, that's a 1,000-step journey, and you got to trust that every step, there's another one after it, instead of I get all the way to this top and then suddenly there's no more steps. What happens then? Right? So there is that trusting. That is getting on the plane, that without knowing how an engine works, without knowing if there's enough fuel, without knowing the guy sitting next to you wants to kill you, without knowing if there's actually a pilot in
You're
that.
putting all this stuff in her head right now. You're freaking her out more.
Think about it. Like, yeah, you're getting onto this plane that's somehow flying in the air by two
it's
guys.
metal.
You know.
Yeah, I've taken metal, and it falls when I let go. How is this magical metal? What is this magical metal that suddenly it defies all logic and understanding? Well, it's the movement and it's the lift, and there's the ailerons or whatever, and right. But the thing of that is, we look at these moments like, you know, we meet Dr. Joe and we read his book, and all these things, they resonate with us for some reason. We don't know why. We're realizing we're the lion. And then Don Hoffman comes on, and oh man, that resonates with me. You're realizing you're the lion. Oh shit, maybe I am this thing. And then ultimately all you're doing is looking in the mirror, but the thing that is looking at you is telling you, reminding you what you are, right? So Don Hoffman, we see, is this person outside of us who's come up with this mathematical equation that nothing exists. And then there's this experiment that happened that all these researchers did called the double slit experiment, where they took subatomic particles and they shot them at a board, and we believe it. Well, that happened. How do you know it happened? Because someone said it happened? It's so funny now. Like, you can look at two political opponents, and you can see the supporters that line up behind those two political opponents. They are seeing the exact same thing, and yet they have two total different outcomes. Well, that's not what happened. I'm watching it. I am too. I'm watching it. That's not what happened, because we are the AI. Our perception is the AI. Everything is possible. Everything is possible. It's just where you tune your perception. So you can see one thing and say, oh my God, that is the most magical thing I've ever seen. I can say, and say, you're out of your mind. I can see a guy standing on a bridge with a rubber band tied to his back. Oh, I'm going to jump here. You're insane. You are absolutely insane that you're going to trust that rubber band. Oh, I've done it, and it's amazing. Two totally different views. So the idea of it has been us all along is really where quadrant theory comes on, because when we start understanding who we are, not only the lion that doesn't know it's a lion, but then the lion that suddenly realizes he's the lion, is happening all at the same time, all at once, then it's like, oh, wait a minute. I can trust this staircase now. I can trust this plane because I am the plane. I am the staircase. I am the light. This is all just my experience in the observer's, God's eyes.
So now see, that's very nice that you got right there into the quadrant thingy, Bob. Can you now please explain to me? I know I'm going to go through the whole process. What do you mean? What is this quadrant theory? Like what, can you walk me through because quadrant 4, so can you walk me through the 4 bits?
Before you do that, okay? So quadrant theory is confidence. Because again, what is confidence? It's knowledge. So quadrant theory is more knowledge that puts in your little bucket of confidence that helps you go forward when you are not the person doing the stepping, when you can say not much money left, but this thing is saying keep coming, you don't need it. Okay, I'm going to trust it. I'm getting on that plane.
Yeah, so quadrant theory is, I think, really it's a culmination of many different teaching and modalities that we've been introduced to. You know, I will say it's
some of parts.
Yeah, it's bits and pieces of knowledge, different knowledge that is sort of all brought together to create a map, right? So it's like all these pieces of the puzzle for us anyway. It's like we've took all these pieces of the puzzle of our journeys over the last however many years, and all these pieces created a full map. So in different modalities, we had part of the map, we had pieces of the map, but there was always these underlying questions both of us had around why are some people, you know, we go to these meditation retreats, why are some people going home and changing their lives, others aren't? Why are some people doing shadow work, but they're not really moving forward with it? Why are some people so freaking connected to the galactic realms, but struggle in their relationship with their partner? Like, it was these underlying questions that we always had, that we could see all of these pieces of the puzzle, but they weren't all in one to create a map. So it started with Jill Bolte Taylor's experience and her theory of the 4 characters. She's a neuroscientist. She ended up having a stroke. Her experience of her stroke and after, she wrote in her book. She has one of the biggest watched TED Talks. And she talks about the 4 characters of the brain, actually, like how our brain is segmented into 4 characters. And as you know, she's describing these 4 characters, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Like I can see all 4 of those characters in my life. But then I started thinking, you know what, there's all these other modalities that I've learned that actually have 4 sections and 4 quadrants. And so I took, you know, I split it into, instead of characters, quadrants. And then we started talking about where everything that we've learned and everything in nature can get mapped onto these 4 quadrants, including astrology. The 4 signs fit perfectly under the description of these quadrants, of these characters. The 4 levels of consciousness, which are deeply spiritual principles, fit exactly onto this map. How psychology, Carl Jung, the 12 archetypes underneath the 4 main archetypes fit perfectly under this. And the more we talked about it,
the seasons,
the 4 seasons, the 4 elements, it was like everything could be mapped. And then, you know, we started listening to other things where they described 4 elements of something. And I was like, you can map it. You can map it to where it fits in these quadrants.
Well, you can even think of, honestly, you can even think of Led Zeppelin, because there's a singer, there's a drummer, there's a bass player, and then actually there was...
But those 3 could be mapped. I guarantee.
Well, the Beatles.
I guarantee the 3 could be mapped. Even if you only have 3 of them, they could fit over top. So it's like we were putting a map over top of these, and what we came to really understand
was wasn't 3, it was 4. Robert Plant, Jimmy Page, John Bonham, and John Paul. You're wrong. What am I saying? And the Beatles too. 4.
There we go.
Right.
So what we learned from this is the science is the neuroplasticity, right? The science is the brain's ability to change. They used to say that the brain couldn't change. You are who you are, and that's who you are, and you don't change. That literally science told us this. Then starts coming people like Joe Dispenza and really brilliant neuroscientists. And this is why I say the science always leads to the spirituality, because if you study neuroscience deep enough, it's always going to lead you to the spiritual, because there's questions that can't be answered only with the science. And that's what we really started to begin to understand, him and I, was you have the left hemisphere, which within that left hemisphere, you have your thinking brain and your emotional brain. And then you have the right hemisphere, thinking brain, emotional brain, 4 different quadrants, masculine, feminine, balance on each side. And what we started realizing was these people that we couldn't figure out why they couldn't do certain things is because they were stuck in a certain quadrant, literally, of their brain, a neural network that was existing, that was dominant. And they would say, I don't know how to be creative, which is the right side. That's the connection with who you really are. In Jill Bolte Taylor's experience in her stroke, the left side of her brain, her whole identity went offline, literally, like a switch turned off. And so all she was a little ball of light. No
fear,
no ending of this to you, no memory, no memory of who she was, right? Which is what makes the human experience so amazing, is the memories, which enriches us, right?
And also the projection, right?
The projection
of
that I am
wow, I
something,
can't wait till this happens. Imagine how great this is. When you're in the other side,
right?
You are just in that. There is no imagining any better. You're just better, right? In the moment, so present, you are in a state of bliss. But you can't feel. You can't have the texture. You can't have the experience.
Forward motion. There's no
forward, no backward motion.
No forward, no backward. It's just right here. And so what we started realizing, really, I thought, Don Hoffman talks about this is a headset. It's just a headset. It's not the real reality. But what if the brain is the headset? What if the actual brain is the headset? And what if we learn how to use that headset? I believe we always were meant to use the entirety of the headset, not just the spiritual, not just the science, not just I am the end all be all, but also the individuation, which is the question you asked. How do I make sense of, well, I am this, I am me, and you are you, but I know I'm God. How do I make sense of that? Well, the Quadrant Theory will explain that perfectly to you, because Quadrant 4 is your direct portal to all that is, right? It's the spirit world, the flow, all of that. Interestingly enough, in the center point, literally in the brain, if you have the 4 quadrants, in the center is what's called in Indian tradition the cave of Brahma, the source, the God, which is literally in the center point of those 4 quadrants, which is your pineal and pituitary gland. So you cannot tell me that all of this does not point to how to learn to use our headset so that we can experience balance, so that we're not stuck totally in the wounded child fear. I can't move forward. There's no forward motion in that. It's a circle. You're in winter. That's the winter phase. You're stuck in winter. You have to go to winter. Have to go within. You have to heal. The problem is you get stuck in that. So the question then becomes, do I trust the cycle to automatically move out? Or can I have enough self-awareness to go, it's time to take an action to move out of this quadrant?
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was gonna ask because you're mentioning, but you've not actually said which one's which. So because you said there's 4 of them, and you said inner child, like little self. Can you name which one's which and where they are in your brain?
Sure, go ahead.
So quadrant 1 is the doer, the thinker, the learner, right? It's the first stage. If we talk about the 4 stages of the flow cycle, it's struggle. The reason why it struggles is because you're learning something.
Yeah, and also, so when she says doer, just so to kind of expand on that, that's where your political system, that's where your government system, that's where your mortgage is, that's where your job is, that's where your boss is. I'm going to do this to get that.
Okay. Your identity.
Basically your identity.
Human identity, which we have to have.
We have to have it to experience
a 3-dimensional world, right?
Yep, to experience what touch feels like, kinetic touch.
To learn, to grow as a soul, you have to be an individuation. I heard someone say something the other day. It was so profound. You need time to evolve.
Yes.
You don't evolve without time.
Yes.
Because growth happens over time, right?
Yes. And memory, knowing where you came from.
Exactly. Memory creates wisdom.
And the vision of where you want to go.
Yeah.
Right?
Have time. Time exists in quadrant 1.
And is that change, like in terms of change, it doesn't happen overnight, right? It literally doesn't.
Well,
It takes.
Well, think
Yeah.
about the lion again, right? So the
Yeah, yeah.
lion for 5 years forgot. He never knew he was a lion. But if he didn't have time, he would never remember that I've never attacked this squirrel before.
Yeah.
He would just have, the instinct to attack, right? So his memory of, well, I'm scared of that thing. I remember that I'm scared of that thing. And now something is challenging that because this other one is just going and getting it. So
you have to have time, and that exists in quadrant 1, time. It's the movement forward. It's the masculine energy. It's the earth element in the earth signs. They're very earth-oriented, materialistic, practical. I need to move forward, right? You have forward motion, you have time, you are doing, you're going in a forward motion. Volume turned way up, you become burnt out, you become anxious, you become, oh my God, fearful all of the time because what's going to happen, and you become a doer nonstop. You don't know how to relax, right? Volume turned down, you have no forward motion. You have no movement forward. You have no purpose. You don't have enough of the materialistic individuation, right? So that's quadrant 1, okay? This is also, quadrant 1 is also the level 2 in talking about the 4 levels of consciousness, which again goes back to deep spiritual principles. Quadrant 2 is actually quadrant 1 is actually level 2 by me. It's when you start, you do actually get that, like, oh, I'm going to make shit happen, right? This is the personal development space. My will, I will make shit happen. That's the doer. We need all of us need that, right? Quadrant 2, we will call the wounded child. So this is your healing space. Your somatic healing space is in quadrant 2. It's the winter. It is the release phase of the flow cycle. It is the level 1 consciousness because it exists in victimization. It is that space where addicts live because they can't. It is the objective style of focus. When we're talking about the 4 styles of focus in the open focus diagram, it's the objective focus, meaning you are out there, I am in here. We are 2 separate things. And I need you to do this for me so that I can feel better, right? It's the victimization. So it's actually the first level of consciousness. You have to have it. Because it also includes the memories, not just the bad memories, but the good memories. How do you get into a state of gratitude? Many times I tell people, remember a good memory from your past. You can't do that if you don't have memory of your past. So this is where we go into in the healing spaces, right? Like the somatic, this always involves the body. Quadrant 2 and 3 is always going to evolve a physical manifestation because it's the feminine aspect, it's the body. And so you're going to need to work within those deep, dark spaces we talked about to heal that inner child. Because if you don't, everything that's happening in 2, this is where spiritual bypass can come in. If you aren't willing to go down there, it's still driving number 1. So you're still going to see when you're doing, I can make a lot of money, but there's still never enough money because down here in my wounded child, I was poor when I grew up. So I can make millions of dollars, but I didn't heal this number 2. So the millions of dollars I make doesn't really matter. It's still not enough.
It's never going to be.
I'm still scared. I'm still terrified. I'm still trapped in my victim that's driving that because I haven't been willing to work with that. So when you hear spiritual bypass, you're going to hear people go from 1 to 4. They're just trying to go, they're trying to jump over number 2, right? But you can't. You got to have the number 2. So that's the winter, that's the release, that's the going within. That's the woundedness, the victimization. When the volumes turn 2 up, I'm a victim. I have no power. I'm a small child that cannot exert any forward motion. I'm a dopamine fiend, so I will do everything that I can to avoid uncomfortable feelings. And people think addicts like drugs out. No. Phone, sex, distraction, you know, all those things.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add to that?
No.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Quadrant 3. So quadrant 3 is the right hemisphere. So that's the left hemisphere of your brain. epitome of the human experience. Left side, individual person.
Mm.
This human experience I'm experiencing. Now we move to the right side. We move to quadrant 3. The right side is no individuation, no time, no space, presence. So when we come down to quadrant 3, this is the very playful child in you, right? The one that would dance without giving a shit what anyone thought. The one that would say to a stranger, "You're fat," and wouldn't worry about what that person, because they have no past or present. They're totally, this is the part of you that when you feel yourself let go a little bit, when you're about to go bungee jumping. That's number 3. You're in number 3. You're so volume turn 2 up, adrenaline junkies. They don't have enough here, actually. So that can be dangerous because their volumes turned way too up. They have no forward motion. All they care about is right here and right now. But too much volume, you can't have any forward motion, and it can get dangerous. But balanced, the volume balanced in that quadrant, you learn how to tap into that present playful part of you, right? So children, think of children when they're just having loads of fun. If we're stuck in our left side, we hate that. We're like, you got to grow up. You have to, instead of learning to join them so that we still have our own playful inner child, that we're able to be present in the moment and just experience what is happening, right? Quadrant 4. I believe quadrant 4 is the portal to the spiritual. It is the sage in you. It is the guru, the God in you, the
all things that you see.
Absolutely. The access point to what is really true. But the wise, not the child that's just present and tranquil. The one that can think,
the light,
and have wisdom, and from wisdom comes memory, and in order to have memory you have to have time. But that quadrant 4 has integrated all of that and knows all of that. It is the being in you that knows, right? But it couldn't know unless it had identities and human experiences. Why it is so profound for us is because if you think of the map in that way, every single quadrant is necessary.
Yes.
The things in nature, the 4 chambers of our heart. Interestingly enough, our heart has 4 chambers, and it's mapped the same exact way. The top is the 2 chambers at the top are the masculine. They're the one that push the blood out to either the body or the lungs. The lower one are the atriums, left and right atrium, which is the receiver, the feminine. They receive the blood either from the lungs or the body. Hand it to the masculine pushes it out. All 4 chambers of the heart have to work perfectly with each other. Have to. Moment to second to second to second. They don't. Heart disease, heart failure, you die.
So let's think about how this affects us in a day-to-day basis, right? So let's say you have this ship that holds, let's just say it transports oil, okay? The energy coming in is the oil that gets, that fills this ship. It's this stream, a hose, a pipe, that all this energy, this oil, goes in to fill these 4 tanks. Now, when you just fill the one side, the first tank, right? First quadrant, it fills that. What happens? The boat starts to list. Then you start to fill the second tank, it starts to list more. That boat isn't going anywhere. It is out of sequence. It is out of balance. It is listing to one side, and the other side is not even existent at this point. You can't even, it's not even there because you're listing so high. You don't even know these other tanks exist. But when you start, so let's say that's how the boat originally, the ship starts to get filled. Well, we're going to fill tank 1 first. We're going to fill tank 2. Well, wait a minute. Now this boat is going to be out of balance. Yeah, I know, but we're going to fill these other tanks later. Just give it time. Okay. So tank 3 starts to fill, and then it becomes completely balanced in a floating ocean, right? So think about this. If now this ship is starting to come up. Now there's different ways to
individualized ways.
Balance this. You can do with the flow, because as this pipe comes in, you have these 4 tanks, and it each has an outlet. This big hose has a little hoses that go right into those tanks. Well, first, number one, all the power, all the energy, all the oil is going into tank 1 because all the other hoses, all the other valves are shut off. Then it opens the second valve, and now 1 and 2 are getting filled. Well, now you're starting to get out of balance. But what if we can open all 4 at the same time? Then wouldn't we rise in balance? Then rise in balance. So in order to have that, yeah, you have to have number 1. You have to have the money. You have to have, you know, the mortgage. You have to have the boss. But you can't get stuck there.
That's right.
Because you will go out of balance. An out of balance ship, an out of balance body, an out of balance being will not be a full being. It can't. So maybe that's where disease steps in. It becomes out of balance in itself. The body becomes out of balance. In other words, it is out of balance in itself. It is diseased. It's diseased. So we go back into number 2 to find out, why are we out of balance? So we start filling the number 2 tank. Well, I am this way because my mother said this to me. And now that tank starts to get filled. I am this way because my father said this to me. And then my brother said this to me. And little by little, that starts to even list even more and more and more. So now what do? Well, this is too listing. I need to get over and fill the other side. So what do? I go to number 4. I'm going to go out of my body now. I have so much disease. I have so much out of balance in my body. I am going out of it. I'm going to go out and remember who I am. I'm going to remember that I am the light. And then we start filling that tank. And then ultimately what happens, because we are all these 3 things, we then can go into the inner child that is the free child, that can play again, that can be in the present moment. Right? So if we think about this is all we need to do, there is the way to, at the top of the tank, that the energy comes in where the direction of flow goes into. So when you're in a meditation, what are you doing? You're filling tank 4. When you're doing breath work, what are you doing? You're filling tank 4, because that's needed. And then people come out of that meditation retreat and they're like, oh my God,
I can't go back to my
for
life.
7 days I've been filling this tank, and you're telling me I got to go back into 1? I can't go into 1. And it's so uncomfortable until you're in tank 1 and you're swimming around again, and you're like, oh, this is familiar to me. Yeah. And I don't feel as good as I did when I was in tank 4. That's for sure. And let me find out again, why don't I feel so good? And you jump over into tank 2. Oh, that's right, my mom. That's right, my dad. That's right, my boss. That's right, my government. They are making me feel this way. I'm a result of them. When we don't realize that tank 4 encompasses all the things, and you are all the tanks. So the being, the God that you are praying to, you are that being. That's tank 4. You are that. So what if we knew for sure that there was a tank 4? What if we knew for sure that we were in tank 1? One last thing. There's another way that we can equalize these tanks, because we think we can only do it with the flow coming in. Well, there's little holes that connect all these tanks underneath the energy level, the water level, the oil level, that you can balance these tanks. But we don't have the key when we're 1. We don't have the key when we're 2. We have the key when we're all of them. When we know there is some level of oil in this tank, now we can open it up. Because if we open it and there's no level, then air gets in, and that messes the whole system up again. So we need to fill enough in each of these tanks that there's a very low gate at the bottom of the tank now has enough that when you open it, it can equalize all within the liquid in itself. And that's when we believe that psychedelics do it, specifically ketamine. That's why we're excited about ketamine, because ketamine is the regulator of the flow of oil that comes into the pipe that equally distributes the oil into each tank. And it helps you remember by raising the levels equally between all these tanks.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. I love this. Like, it's like, see the flow? That's where the flow is. When you just start going and
100%.
it's woo, it's happening. And okay, because you touched on you in an analogistic kind of
Yeah.
way on how to do this. Now, because I'm thinking the example that you gave him about what experience you had, and of course you explained what you were going through. Can you walk me through how you applied what Scott just said? Like what did you do in those steps besides the sitting in the energy and feeling it all and all that? How did you allow the fluid to go to all the others?
Can I very, very quickly, with this analogy, let me tell you what happened to her. She immediately realized what happened. I'm out of balance. And she screamed to whoever was on the regulator, shut that valve off. Valve was shut off. But what happens is whatever is in the pipe in the flow after the valve still fills the tank. So she was in the moment, even though she knew that this is not real. The water, or the oil in this case, was filling that tank, even though that valve, she had the awareness way back there to shut it off, shut the energy to it. This is not real. It was still flowing into her tank.
Yeah, I mean, great question. And we've been playing with this for the last 2 months, this quadrant theory, and really, okay, how do we, and that is ultimately the process.
That's what she said. That is my quadrant theory.
Ultimately, the 12 weeks that we take people through is to create their own map, meaning each person's going to have different characteristics of each of those quadrants, and each person's going to have different tools. 2 kinds of tools. Number 1, a tool to turn up, to raise the volume, but also to get out of a quadrant when you know. Now, this is what I said earlier. When you can recognize all 4 of your quadrants, right? That's the first step. How am I physically? What are the chemicals? Because there's certain chemicals you release for each quadrant, literally in your body. So what are those chemicals in my body? What do they feel like? What am I thinking? What is my physical body? I mean, like for me, when I knew I just went to quadrant 4, my face breaks out, right? So each of us have each individualized, unique characteristics of each quadrant. And how we move to a quadrant is individualized too. For me, once I start to know the quadrant, and I start to know my cycles and trust in the cycles, I can then make the conscious decision to go, am I stuck in 2, or am I just in the cycle? And can I choose to go, I am consciously in the cycle. If I choose that, I can't be a victim, right? So if I'm consciously choosing to go to number 2, the only way, and what happened to me in that deep dark night of the soul, I went deep into number 2. Right? Even to the collective. I knew I wasn't just experiencing my own darkness. It was the collective of number 2 happening. Here's where these quadrants really matter. I had built my 4 up enough to be able to hold my number 2. So that I wasn't getting completely lost in number 2. I was, we say feel it to heal it, which is not from us. That's from Aaron Doughty. That's his phrase. You have to feel it to heal it. And remember how I said quadrant 2, it's going to be a physical thing?
Yeah.
A physical feeling of the fear. So I knew I was deep in my quadrant 2. I knew that because with this map is number 1, the absolute requirement to this map in the quadrants is self-awareness. You have to learn when you are in each quadrant so well that you have enough self-awareness to go, where am I right now?
Yep.
And if you have a map and you have them written down, there's no guessing, because the ego's tricky. It will trick you into believing you're in a certain quadrant when you're not.
Yeah.
But if I have written down, I can go, oh, shit, this is what I'm feeling and experiencing and saying to myself and behaving like I know without a doubt I'm in this quadrant. Here's the really cool thing when we talk about healing number 2. I could heal my number 2 and feel that deepest, darkest fear, but I still had the voice of my number 4 speaking to me.
Because that level
had risen.
Has risen up now. You have more belief in level in 4, in God, in the being that you are. You have more belief in that. So now you can see through, you can start to regulate how much of this energy is going into tank 2.
But imagine if my 4 volumes all the way turned down and I have no access to it. I'm stuck
in 2.
Stuck at number 2, right? I'm like, I need to kill myself.
Yeah, because the regulator,
I don't see a way out.
So in other words, this regulator is just running willy-nilly. Before all this flow comes in, it is regulated to each of the 4 pipes that fill the 4 tanks, but they get stuck. The problem is not that they get stuck. The problem is we don't even see that they're stuck. We don't even know it's stuck until it's too late. It's a runaway train. And it's like, oh, you got to shut off number 1. I don't know what you're talking about, number 1. I mean, and meanwhile, all of this gallons and gallons of energy is going into tank 1. I got to keep doing fucking A. I can't pay my mortgage payment. I'm in fear now because look at all the things I'm going to lose. So what we need this regulator to be fixed. Finally, maybe it needs to be lubricated. Maybe it needs to be moved around a little bit, right? So you can have flow going out of this pipe, out of this pipe, out of this pipe. And let's try it. Let's see where the flow goes here when we put the regulator this way. Oh, it goes in the tank 4. No wonder it hasn't been getting anything. We need to put more energy in the tank 4. So think about that. When suddenly you realize in a moment, I'm in tank 2 right now. The regulator is fucking stuck again. I need to go back and I need to fix the regulator to where I can trust the regulator is doing what I am thinking. So immediately when I get stuck in 1, sorry, I got to get over to 4 for a little bit. I'm just going to leave you here, going to let you settle that level. This will all work out. I know the mortgage will get taken care of. My boss will change his mind. The car will start tomorrow. You go into 4 and you go, okay, I need that to regulate. So I'm going to go into 4 here. I know that when I come out of this 4, chances are that car is going to start. Chances are my boss is going to change his mind, right? Because suddenly you're not in the fear or stuck in number 1, and you're not enforcing number 1 with number 2, because what would happen? Well, of course, my car doesn't start. Because everything bad happens to me because my mother said this to me, and my dad did too, right? Yeah, my dad said that too. And my brother, he punched me once. He bit the shit out of me. That's right. So that's why my car's not going to start tomorrow, because nothing good ever happens to me.
There's different ways actually that, and this comes from the open focus technique by Les Fimi. There's actually different ways we even pay attention in each of those quadrants. So when we're too... So like he said, then we go to quadrant 4, but people can stay stuck there and I don't want to deal with anything. I can't deal with anything at all. I don't want any responsibility. I know I was there.
Can I just add a little bit in here? I don't know if you mentioned, but quadrant 4 is the meditation part, the breath work, whatever ways people find to.
Yes.
Right.
Whatever you can connect to who you
my
are.
tarot cards too. My tarot cards is my number 4.
Yes.
For me.
Yes.
And it's going to search for it, right? I'm going to put my attention on tank 4, on the quadrant 4. I am going to fill that tank. And suddenly this YouTube video shows up that says, oh, you're a Taurus? Unbelievable news. You're going to meet the person of your dreams. All this money, you're going to win the lottery. Oh my God, this sounds fantastic. And you think there's this outside person that's reading these cards when it's you. You're just putting your attention on the possibility. But then what happens is we get into 1 and we get into 2. Well, this could never happen to me. That's not going to work until it's leveled. Until you can say, this can happen for me.
And then you can be in 1 with the volume turned up on 4.
Yes.
That's where I talk about taking action with faith.
Yes. Because then you can say, well, and imagine this. just imagine this, your boss, or, all right, I'll give you an example. The other day, we have found this most amazing RV site. It's just amazing. I mean, it's like our own private woods. It's beautiful. We don't see another RV. It's just amazing. So I saw this and I'm like, I want to change from the RV spot that we are because I didn't like it. I'm looking at this old RV. I see the sewer hose and the poop going through the sewer hose that I can see and I can smell. And I don't want to see that. I want to see the beauty that surrounds me. And we walked up and we saw this site and we thought, is it worth moving for? So in other words, to move our RV, we need to bring in the slides. It takes effort. We got to break it down. It has to be uncomfortable for a little while. We have to do some work to do that. And we talked about it. And she said, well, you saw it. Let's just go up there and look at it. And she said, I agree. I think we should move. So we went through all of that, all the number one stuff, so we could move up to this
the struggle phase of flow,
right? To this other site, because I had a vision of what it would be like to sit in this spot and to look out at what I'm looking at right now behind this screen, right? I had the foresight to do it. And I can imagine myself sitting in my chair at the fire pit, looking out at this beautiful scenery. So that forced us to say, let's do it. So, right, the gain was greater than the loss, was greater than the doing, was greater than, well, maybe we should just stay here because we're safe here, because we were, instead of just putting through all this. So we do it. And then we realize we have only booked a certain amount of days, and now I want to add days. Well, I have to go now and book these additional days. Right? Because I only booked it for a couple of days, and now we had time, and we love this spot. We've experienced it. We've sat in it. We had the fire pit there, right? So now I have to go back to the office, and I have to book an additional day, and I'm afraid they are going to say, I'm sorry, it's not available. But I say, no, I'm not going to allow that. This isn't going to happen. I'm going to go talk to this person, and of course she says, no problem, it's available. You want to book in an extra day? Yes, I do. Fantastic. We come back. Then I realize we can do this another day. We can stay here another day. Why wouldn't we want to stay here? Because it gets more and more magical every day. So I go back and I have the thought, might not be available, but I go in there and I say, I would like to book it. I'm so glad that you chose to stay with us. It's available. Best site in the park, and yet it's ours. And then it happened again one more time. But what if I knew the person standing behind that desk was me, was a part of me, was another cell in the body that I exist in? What if? And I knew that, of course, she was going to say it was available because I want it to be available. And I know she wants me to be able to stay in that spot because it's going to benefit her, which it does because I gave her money. So that's really where all this ties together, where all this comes together, where it's the trusting that if it's available, right, that she wants me there as much as possible. And when she says, I'm sorry, it's not available anymore, to immediately go, oh, well, there's something better.
Can I add?
Right? So then we move. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, but there's more things I want to say, and then I'll ask a question or wrap it up. Two important things about this quadrants. Number one, the astrology. Number two, the judgment. Number one.
Because you were judging me as I was telling that story?
No.
That was my inner child. I was in number two.
Yes. The judgment part's the most exciting thing I think about this whole quadrant theory. But the astrology, right? So I suppose you can tell what quadrant the air signs go under, right? If you had to guess, what would you say?
4.
Very airy, can be very flighty, airy.
There's no proof.
We're air. We're like, oh, we cut. So think about this. You map the 12 signs under the 4 main elements, right? Taurus, Earth, very loves the material world, right? He's a builder. I mean, you can't get more Taurus than that. Building, molding, experiencing. He's very like sensation driven, right? Like very he's in nature and he gets turned on. I mean, he does, because that nature experience turns him on, where I am more in my mind thinking of ideas all the time, technology ideas. I can get very flighty, right? First part of my life, I was very flighty. So if we come into this existence with, let's say, one quadrant already turned up, because that's what quadrant we're born into, right? So the volume's really high on that. So they're going to say, well, you're, whatever, because you're a Virgo, and that's a quadrant. I don't know. What's Virgo?
What is it? It's the same as the Taurus.
Okay. So you're that way because you're. However, all spiritual traditions will tell you that the more enlightened you become, and let's replace the word enlightened with balanced.
Yeah.
The more balanced you become, you then, they say, start to become more like all of the signs. Well, why is it? Because you're literally creating equilibrium between all four quadrants, which I believe we were always supposed to. We just got way off track. And so when you start to become more like all the other signs, you have access to all those amazing things you thought you didn't have. Well, I'm dumb when it comes to this, or I don't have creativity, or I don't know how to play. False, not true. You just don't have the volume turned up in that quadrant. That's where the astrology comes in, right? But the last thing that I think will change so much by this theory and people understanding this map, it takes away all judgment from self and other. Why? Because if I beat up on myself because I'm having a moment where I'm feeling like my inner child, if I beat up on myself and say, well, you should get over it, Em, like you shouldn't be down there, my number one, right? Talking to my number two, and I'm stuck on the left side, nothing can come in. If I'm beating up on myself because I'm stuck in there, guess what I'm doing? I'm keeping myself stuck in there, right? But if I can take away all judgment and go, I'm in quadrant 2 right now. I have two options. Number one, I can accept it and consciously choose to stay there. Number two, I can change on the map. I can go to a different quadrant on the map. Judgment has nothing to do with it. It all comes down to where I am in choice. But the second part is in other. If I judged him for being materialistic, right? Number one, it keeps me out of quadrant 1 because I'm judging him. Like, oh God, all you care about is money. If I can go, holy shit, quadrant 1 is literally the builders of reality. They're the builders of this 3-dimensional plane. How fucking amazing is that? Not only am I not judging him, then I also can learn from him.
She should be learning from me anyway. But this is a perfect segue, because now
go for hours, so we have to
wait, hang on. This is what I'm getting to right now.
For sure.
So in the third part of this, what we're going to talk about is how the quadrant theory pertains to somebody who has a disease or MS, or to really start to understand that by utilizing this, you now know what you need to do in order to heal yourself.
Yes.
And the greatest thing that we are trying to uncover is, how do I fix me?
Yes.
I have MS, I have cancer, I have this, I have depression. How do I fix me? Well, you have to do things that you've never done before.
Yeah.
And you don't know that they're there. But the quadrant theory proves to you, not only shows you how people have healed by using the quadrant theory without even knowing the quadrant theory, and then how to draw a map for yourself to then know without a shadow of a doubt, if I do this map, I will heal my body. And that will be on the next episode. So
you have decided. I mean, thank you for that, because it's,
I know, you're right.
Honestly, I've been sitting here, and whatever you talk, whether Em or Scott, whichever one of you, the sage or the dragon, by the way, because I resonate so much. Like it's interesting how they come about in my life lately, by the way.
Because we're in your quadrant. What quadrant would we be in?
4.
Yes.
4.
Yes. So in other words, we are you. We are in your being. You're listening to us, so you're turning it up.
Yeah.
right? Instead of where's the money going to come from?
I mean, you know what the funny thing
Yeah,
is? Because it got so intense. Like besides the insights that I've had, just listening to you two, I'm like, oh, this is why that, this is why that, this is why that. Like so
That's what it does.
funny.
Yes.
That's what it
Especially,
does.
oh my
It's
God, but it's
Thing.
yeah.
It's its own energy. It's its own
Yes.
content.
So I'm going to give you.
Sorry.
So now let's say this is episode 3. So welcome back. So I'm going to give you my whole journey, so you can understand where I was in my life in the you know, what is that, in the progress of my lifetime, in what quadrant I was in, and why what happened to me will prove to you how to heal, because I did it, right? So, you know, I was paralyzed. I got an autoimmune disease. They thought it was MS, and it wasn't. It was something that you could heal instead of being unhealed. The doctor told me that. Who's the doctor? I'm the doctor, right? The doctor exists in my experience. So when I was a little kid, my mom was an alcoholic. My dad wasn't there. I basically had free reign. I could do whatever I wanted to. As a 3-year-old kid, I ate frozen hot dogs, which I absolutely loved. I ate dog biscuits because my dog liked them, so why wouldn't I? And I did. I liked the texture. I liked eating them. Nothing better than a milk-bone dog biscuit in an afternoon. And I would eat, soup out of the can. I didn't know you had to cook it. Didn't know that because I didn't have someone doing it for me. I did it for myself. And that made me feel really kind of powerful and very efficient, sustaining, self-sufficient. I like to say self-efficient. So one for our side. Anyway, so I learned that. But then, as I got older and I would tell the story of what I used to do as a kid, other kids would look at me and say, oh my God, that must have been horrible for you. What? Well, because of this and this and this and this. And where was your mom? And that was a really unhealthy childhood. We were in school and we were doing this and we were going to sports and we were doing that. I didn't do any of that. And suddenly I fell into the tank of number 2. I became out of number 3 and 4, by the way, because I was my own little world. I had my trucks. I had my plaything. I had my big dirt pile in the back of my garage. I was living the ideal life. And then suddenly, now I'm dropped into 2. What happened to me? So then I started to research that. What happened to me? Well, my mom was an alcoholic. Oh, maybe that's why I'm this way. Maybe that's why I'm not feeling so great right now emotionally. And that tank started to fill and fill and fill until I had to take action and I had to go see somebody to talk to them about how I wasn't feeling the way I used to feel. And now I was heavy. Now I was this thing that everything seemed to happen to me. And she helped me remember what it was like to do things that I was really good at. Well, tell me what you love to do. I love my work. I'm a carpenter. What jobs do you like to do? I love putting in doors. Tell me about that. And as she walked me through in these sessions of, tell me how you put a door in, I would suddenly turn into light because it was something that I enjoyed, just like playing with my trucks behind. So now I started to go into 3 and I started to regulate and I became really, really good at it. And then I met somebody that was really in her 2. And it took me back into that tank. She took me back into that tank because she had all this trauma as a child. And I loved her so, so, so much. And yet I fell into her tank because I wanted to be with her. I wanted to comfort her.
Because quadrant 2 is very empathetic. By the way.
Yeah.
The water signs,
yeah,
the winter, the water, they're very empathetic.
But I knew
because
I had a
tank
too,
so they feel.
Yes, I knew I had this memory of light. I had this memory of light that, not God, it was more than that. It was something that was with me all the time. Like, as a child, you have an invisible friend, right? That was my invisible friend. I knew he was there. I didn't know what he looked like. I couldn't smell him, but I felt him. And so I knew that quadrant 4 existed. I had a level. It wasn't an empty tank. It was a tank that had a level in it. Quadrant 1 might have been a little bit more, quadrant 2 might have been a little bit more, but there was a level there. And number 3 too. So I had a level in each one of those tanks. It's which one is more at the time. And that's where I would be. So, you know, I started this company. And I remember having this conversation with somebody said, I know you love what you do, but what's your plan? Because you have to drive to all these jobs. You have to, and it's taking you away from this family. You have a son now. You have a wife, you have a house, you have an environment in which you are needed. So you're always, you know, out there doing what you love to do. And he brought me into number 1 with that idea, and I fell into number 1. And when I started to really stack into number 1, all my flow went into number 1, the doing, building a business, hiring guys, getting more jobs. Where before I would go out and I would play, and I would come home after being on the road for 12 weeks. I would come home and I would lay on the couch for a month. Quadrant 4. I was equalizing. I didn't even know I was equalizing, and I was equalizing. Well, this person said, well, that's not right. He was a number 1, and he was telling me to be a number 1. And guess what I did? I became a number 1, until the point I became a number 1 so much that my body said, nope, he is out of balance. Shut him down. Reboot the computer. Suddenly I started to get sick. Suddenly I couldn't start to feel. Suddenly I started to get dizzy. Next thing I know, I'm laying in a bed in a hospital, unable to move.
So think of people with MS, autoimmune, all these conditions
Out of
that they
balance.
don't understand.
Out of balance. I was all in number 1. I wasn't in number 3 anymore. That had gone. I used to be the carpenter. I used to put the doors in. I used to do the things that a creator, a Taurus does. Right? Suddenly I'm not. Suddenly I'm the accountant, number 1. Suddenly I'm the, you know, the check writer, number 1. Suddenly I'm the salesman, number 1. Suddenly I'm the doer and not the creator anymore. So I was out of balance. So then what did I do? I knew that my tank 4 existed. So what did I do? I laid there in that bed and I imagined my future. Because I had a time frame, I had a memory of who I was back then, and I could focus on that time frame and say, okay, I just need to be there now. And something told me, just do this. And then my tank got equalized. And then suddenly I could walk again. Suddenly I could eat again. Suddenly I could do those things. And then I got out of balance again because I went right back into number 1. Now that I can do all these things again, thank God, now I can go and build a business more.
Because, which by the way, we live in a culture of number 1 that highly values,
especially
number 1.
a business. A business is all number 1. So I was a creator, so I could create all these things. And as I build this number 1, I'm going to get all the things. I'm going to get the houses. I'm going to get the additions. I'm going to have the boat. I'm going to have the vacations. I'm going to have all these things. When all I really wanted was to be in 3 and 4 and 1 at the same time, equal. And then what happens? I have a tragedy that happens. In a moment, I'm affected again. And what did that make me do? It made me go back into 4. It made me go back into, what is this all about? What is happening to me? Why has this happened to me? And I went back into 4, and that's when I started to read. That's when I started to go to Dr. Joe. That's when I started to remember who I was when I would sleep on that couch and I would meditate for a month at a time. No joke. A month I would lay on that couch. Obviously, I would get up and I would eat, I would pee, I would poop, and I would go into functions. But every day for a couple hours, I would just sit in there and I would meditate. I didn't know it was meditation, but I was picturing my life how I wanted it. Because in number 2, you have time. In number 2, you have time. You can see the future. You can also remember the past. In 4, there is no future. There is no past. There's only present. And I loved the things that I built. I love to remember that house that I was a part of.
It's very number 2.
I'm very number 2. But there's a fine line where that tank can turn into clear water into dirty water. And you could start, right? Oh, I'm this way because this happened to my car broke down, because instead of the car broke down and I learned to fix it. Instead of you go to the negative part of the meter, right?
Yeah.
So when we really started having these conversations, of this quadrant theory and the regulator that brings into it. What if we could regulate these tanks? What if we could know in a moment, an alarm goes off, like for her, number 2, baby, you're in number 2. Turn the tank off. Before, it would be her that would have to make that decision. She would have to say, this has gotten so hard, so difficult. I want to kill myself. I want to check out. I'm going to turn that valve. And it takes courage. And what does courage come from? Knowledge. We talked about that before. The more knowledge that she acquired, the more courage that she got. And eventually she was able to shut off the valve that led to tank 2. And she started to direct all of the flow, the energy, the oil, the water into tank 4 to equalize, to start to equalize. And as that equalized, then she learned, oh, wait a minute, this is all about where the energy goes. And then suddenly she would get into 1 and she would become the doer. I'm going to build this business. And then it starts to get uncomfortable. Why? Because it's that tank has pressure. And once it fills, and if water keeps going into it, it starts to bulge and too much pressure in that tank. And then you're like, oh my God, I can't take it anymore. And then finally she fell back, right? And that energy got shut off and it goes into 4 again, or it goes into 2, or it goes into 3. But now, by knowing in a moment where you are and what tank you are in, and when you've been in the tank too long, maybe 2 weeks, to understand, oh, wait a minute. Hold on a second. I got to take my foot off the valve here and I got to regulate. I need to go into 4. I need to go into the playful child. I need to go and do something fun. I need to go and do a risk thing. I need to jump out of an airplane. I need to go, mow the lawn so I can be in nature. I need to go on a hike. I need to get out of this number 1 environment, my home, my business, my everything. And I need to go experience something else.
Or I need to go into my number 1.
Yeah. And by knowing that, by knowing the history of the person and who they are, like for you, Gigs, I see you as the number 3. You can get stuck in number 3. You are so playful, but to a number 1, that's really annoying.
Yeah.
Why is she so freaking playful? I got all the shit I got to do.
Because it's unbalanced.
It's unbalanced. Right? So you are not going to resonate with a number 1. A number 2, now that could be different because they want to be like you. So, well, I'm going to watch her a little bit because she's dancing around and she's talking all loud and everything. And I want that in a way, but somewhere it's inside, it's just annoying to me. She's annoying to me. How can she be so happy and flitting around when I can't do that? I want to be like that, but I can't be like that. But if little by little, that person then starts to come into the number 3 and just start off small, going for a hike, loving a dog, loving a cat, petting a dog, petting a cat, trying to get into that playful child again, then eventually it starts to move in the quadrant.
Imagine the power of putting a 3 and a 1 together.
Yes.
It's so interesting because this is what it feels like. Like I said, when episode 3 started, by the way. When episode 3 started, because I catch myself sometimes. I'm like, I am so sucked in. Like, you draw me in so much. So that's your superpower, gaining people's attention.
Yeah. So wait a minute.
Hold on, let her
because I need to ask her the question. Why are you so drawn in? Why are you so drawn in?
I'm thinking because I see that
what quadrant
resonate. Huh?
What quadrant? Are you in when you're being all drawn in?
4, I would say.
Yeah.
You're actually, it's balancing.
Yeah. It's
balancing now.
It's immersive.
Okay, so hold on a minute.
4 and 1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you're learning, but you're resonating.
Yes.
Right, because when you said about the 1 and 3, it feels like my 1 at the moment is very slow. Yeah. Well, sort of being here, being sorry.
Well, the money. Think about it.
Yeah.
The money for a number 4 or a number 3 to have so much impact on money. It's like, I don't want that. I just want to go have fun. But you're telling me that I need this money to pay you so I can live here. Why can't I just be fun?
Yes.
So the money is kind of this construct that you don't really understand.
Oh, you got to repeat that. You said,
okay.
Yeah, it's just I think
Jimmy,
yeah,
that's a
just
good
hear what you have to say, your own experience with.
So my experience,
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
my experience so far is like I'm right at the beginning of understanding all this somewhat, because of course I'm gonna walk through the process with you guys, which I am so fucking grateful for it, by the way, that I'm gonna be able to dig a bit deeper into all this fuckery. I love the word fuckery, by the way. But
Fuckery, man.
just hearing you guys talk, and I had when you were saying about the leveling out of what's happening, I can totally it's a physical sensation, literally in my head right now, where I feel like there's so much being poured in that I'm like, okay. It literally is a physical sensation of when you resonate so much with something. It's like you're such a big sponge that absorbs everything. This is exactly what it feels like for me right now. Because I feel like, as much as you say that I'm very much a quadrant 3, I feel like I've got stuck in 2 for a little bit.
Oh, absolutely, you have.
Very much so. Because of course, 1, the doer and the money part is like, I have turned my face around to that, and then I go into, but I need to do this, and then I see myself, like I honestly see myself being, do I have to live in this world where I have to do, just like you said, where I have to do stuff for money, and then the realization of, at the end of the day, as much as we're balancing and we're one and whatever, the 3D reality is the reality. There's a reason why I'm incarnated in this in this meat suit, right? There is a reason why this is happening. So I guess I am kind of telling this to myself right now, because this is where I'm at. And I never saw myself getting to this. This is something that I don't know how it just came up in my head somewhere, that I could just sit there and talk to myself. But then I thought I can invite people and talk and whatnot. And then it's so interesting, because I know I've seen so many people that start a podcast, for example, and they don't go past episode 3. I think I've got scheduled a month ahead now already.
We've already got 3.
Oh, you don't even
3
know.
episodes here.
Yes, I mean, this is gonna be one big one, because this is just gold on top of gold and then more gold. So I'm just gonna have a massive, big, humonga poop. You know, one of them that you gotta take a picture of because it blocks the toy.
I like it.
Oh
But I
my
think,
God.
Hold on, let her finish.
No, I think I'm done with that. That's kind of it. I am just.
but again, you're regulating. That's why you are regulating. You need to know where you are to get out of where you are. And I think that's the thing. So you're really regulating. So when her and I met, think about this for a couple, for a business partner, a friendship, right? Or your partner. You need to be in an equal place. I think for us, we were both in number 4 at the time when we met, but we were very equal in our tanks. I was raising my tank very equal. She was raising her tank very equal. So we were in much of a balance. So I didn't need anything from her. She didn't need anything from me. So I wasn't in my number 2. Well, it's your fault because you want this from me. It wasn't anything like that. We were very much in the same place in our cycle of life, in our understanding of life. And I think that's why we are what we are, why we are so comfortable with each other. We have Isaiah, our lad, and he is very much in his 3 and 4, very much in his 3 and 4. So when he does number 1 life, and he says, well, I'm just done, I'm not going to do that anymore. And he said, and I'm like, oh, okay, did you give him notice? No, I just left. It stabs me. It stabs me in my number 1. I'm like, oh, that's so irresponsible. How could he do that? But now I have enough 3 and 4 in me and to say, but somehow I know that doesn't matter, that happened.
But also balance, because
right?
you just nailed it on the head when you said, I don't want to do all that, right? And I heavily went through this when we first met and first started to go to Dr. Joe. I am a perfect example of someone that turned the volume all the way up on 4.
Yes.
And turned it all the way down on 1 and 2.
Yeah.
And I couldn't stand I didn't want anything. In fact, to the point of I was judging people for like, oh God, how dare you celebrate holidays? Like that's so traditional and human, right? Like I was on this huge, massive spiritual ego that was like, you know, totally part of my process. I had to go through that.
Mm-hmm.
My life, I put a bomb to it. I put a bomb to my former life, right? And there is no judgment in any of this. This is part of our process. And that may not be the process for other people, right? That's why the maps are individualized. Then we stopped being able to go to retreats, and we finally had to face our number 2, both of us. And we both went through a 2-year period, 2-year cycle in Quadrant 2, both of us.
Dark night of the soul.
Him number 2, me number 2, me number 1. He let go of his number 1. So we were both over on the left side. We started to turn down the volume of 3 and 4. What I see happen, and now I think obviously the ketamine, this is why we haven't talked about it much, and maybe on another episode, why we believe in ketamine and what it's doing in the brain and how it helped us regulate. How it brought this whole quadrant theory about. Because I always remember a conversation with somebody that we met in the Joe community. She was a friend of ours. And I remember, I'll never forget this moment. Of course, it's a defining moment, because she was sort of struggling with money and what to do. And, you know, because this seems to be a phase of 3 and 4 too, or 4, like, okay, now I don't want to fit into that world. How do I, you know, and she was like, but I believe I can hold my hand out and manifest $100 bill. I believe that. I said, but some part of you doesn't, because if you did, it would show up in your hand. What I would say to Isaiah, he would say, I don't have to live by your paradigm. I said, you're absolutely right. We're way off balance in our culture, right? Number 1 has been turned way up. They're trying to solve problems only from number 1 and number 2, while only staying in number 1 and number 2. They're missing half the equation of 3 and 4. That's the problem with medicine and school systems, right? They're leaving out the 3 and 4. They're only getting half the equation. So what I say to somebody that's like deeply spiritual, I know someone right now that we can both say who lives in number 4, but very much struggles in number 1. Here's the problem with that. She lives in a world that is pure magic.
Yes, I know exactly.
And the world needs for magic. Trust me. In order to shift from a level 1 consciousness that we all live in to a balanced consciousness, we need her light.
Somebody's got to be in 4 constantly, right?
Here's the problem. Her magic will not get out into the world, because she is not, number 1, utilizing how to turn on her number 1, or even finding somebody that can help her with number 1. So what happens? It sits where it's at and nothing changes. So in a 3-dimensional space and time, memory, money. Right now, money exists in number 1 in the 3-dimensional space, which we are living. So we have to, until more balance is restored, which I believed it is with cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency is a model of a system that is a balanced system, right? But until we can move this massive collective consciousness of number 1 into more balance with 3 and 4, we have to learn to navigate what we have with where we're going, if that makes sense. We have to learn to navigate. I may have to do some things in 1 that I don't love. Can I do them at minimum so that I can still have my 3 and 4 on while moving forward? And as I do that, as I'm doing that internally, it has to, like he said, it has to happen as a collective. It will have to. So as people understand this quadrant theory, someone who's in 4 can go, oh, okay. I either need to start learning to go to the gym and build that muscle of number 1, no different. And in the meantime, as I'm doing that, I can still have my practices. This is, you know, in my life right now, I will say and it's only ever just the tip, I feel the most balance in my life right now.
That was my number.
Because I will sit down to work, but making sure I'm try to be in more of a flow state. And that may be 2 hours of work, and then I go into number 3, I release and I go play. So I can go through all those cycles, all 4 quadrants in one day.
Well, even just the conversation that you were just saying, you know, you're telling all this. I'm in my number one because I'm listening and I'm taking in the theory of it and how do I put this into my life to make my life better? That's a number one, right? And then, you know, I didn't really have any number two in there except the measurement of time, right? And then number four, for sure, a little bit, because we're talking very esoteric things that maybe we can't tangibly sense. But my number three, for sure, because when she said, you know, just the tip, I said, that's what she said, because that's my little playful self, right? Want to laugh and have fun and be the little sprite that, you know, dances through the forest. So, we really are, we've learned, and I'm going to tell you the thing that really is interesting with our life of, you know, now to me, a foundation of a house seems almost insane to me.
Yeah.
Why would you not want to be able to move your house any which way, wherever you wanted to go? Why wouldn't you want to move your house into winter if you wanted to do that? Why would you not want to move your house into summer if you wanted to do that? I can do that, right? I can be cooler, I can be hotter, I can ski, I can be at the beach. I can literally do that because I can take my house with me. So what have I done? I have redirected number one. I have changed the idea of number one. And I think, you know, when you say, I meet people out here in the RV community that are full-time and I'm like, oh my God, why would I ever go back? I miss it sometimes. I miss having that front door to go through. I miss not having my house shake like I'm in an earthquake. I miss that, right? I miss living in more than 400 square feet. I miss that. I'd like to have my space. And then, but I miss owning something. So they miss being in number one. We are right now in number three because we really are these children that are just playing in a sandbox and seeing what more nature can give to us. And we used to have the mother or the father saying, yeah, but you need to do your homework. All right, Ma, eventually I'll get to it. That's where I am right now. Eventually I'll get to it. Don't worry. You know, but I have time here, money to last me. I have time.
He's trusting the cycle.
Right. So I'm really trusting this cycle of I am going to where death isn't scary to me anymore. Because I remember having this conversation with somebody that had she was doing our one of our courses, and she had cancer, stage 4. And she was just so sweet and just so like unaffected by it. Like she was like, I'm in a hospital room. I'm on the call. I'm in a hospital room. They're going to do all their tests and tell me all the nonsense. I really don't care. And I was just like, she was so indifferent to death because I said, listen, you got days, you know, she was so indifferent to it. And I remember getting on the phone with her and having this conversation of, I really find you fascinating to me. And I have a theory on you. And I said, I have a theory, and think about this. She is 100% in her quadrant 4 because she had knowing. And I said, I have a feeling that you know that this isn't your first go. This isn't your last go. In fact, I think you have a voice in you. You remember that you had a conversation with somebody, and that somebody said, okay, so listen, you've done amazing. Absolutely amazing. We are so impressed what you have done, and you're almost done. You're almost ready for the perfect life that you've been waiting for. But we're going to shove you in there one more time. And this time, we're going to pull you out early for good behavior. We're going to release you from that prison with good behavior. You get to live your life. And then out you came, and here you are, Vicky.
That is such a different way of looking at why somebody might die at a younger transition, transform, croak at a younger age.
And she said, bingo, that's it.
Wow.
She said, I just have this knowing I'm not afraid to die. I'm not afraid to die. And when you think about death is the losing, right? Well, I had a daughter who was 7 years old who I fucking absolutely adored. I adored her when she was 3. I adored her when she was 5. And when she was 7, it was magical moments. Well, now she's 19. She's a different person. She's still magical in her own way, but she's independent. So what happened to the 3-year-old? What happened to the 4-year-old? And what happened to me? I mourned her as a 4-year-old. I've been mourning her because I have a memory of her at 4. So, and realistically, the people around us are dying constantly. because we have a memory of them in a specific time. And then oh God, that was the most amazing time. Remember, we were going camping and we were driving down the road and you said, when's this song going to start anyway? And then suddenly, down, down. It was the moment it was etched in my mind. But my buddy Murph isn't that person anymore. I'm not in a truck with him anymore. I remember it and I have this affinity towards it. I love that moment, right? But it's not there anymore. So did that moment die?
This
Right?
moment is going to die right now.
I
It
think
will.
Amber's had enough by now. It's been a while. What time is it?
Yes.
It's been
Well, this is why
timeless.
it's 2.5 hours. Things
Yes.
long.
It's
See,
time.
she doesn't have the stamina.
She needs to
that I
go.
do.
Excuse me, sir. She needs to go and play now. She needs to go into Quadrant
Yeah.
3.
Well, we do. We need to go outside. We need to eat.
Okay.
And that's what he always tells us to do on the internet.
That's what she said. So that's it. This is the end of it. This is the beginning, the long, the middle.
It is.
For letting
It's
us
the end.
babble on
Oh
and
my
share.
Yes.
Thank you for being my guest in this. In this.
I'm so excited to see what you're creating with this.
And this will be, I'm sure this will open up
So
into
exciting.
many, 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 many discussions.
I mean, do you know what the interesting thing is that I had? Of course, the idea starts, and then the limitation comes right after. Because I'm like, okay, who else can I reach out to? And then
Yes.
I thought even, Aubrey Marcus, let's say, right?
Yes.
And then I'm like, he would never. But then I'm like, why would he not? Why do I put him on a pedestal? Because that's what that is,
Yeah.
because us here, okay, you have more. I want to say you're more visible, but I don't know what the word is. You're more visible out into the world with what things you do and whatnot.
Yeah.
So you're more known, but
Yeah.
then somebody like me that has no visibility doesn't mean that I am less than.
That's
This is-
right. That's
see,
right.
Well, the
it's
question
the
is,
same. Sorry,
Yeah.
so the question is, why Aubrey Marcus?
I don't know, because you see, that's the
He has
I don't
whatever.
think it's that at all. I think it's because he has more reach. And if he has more reach, then I will have more reach. And then my number one will get bigger. I mean,
Interesting. I never seen that part, but now you put it in there.
Because,
Yeah.
Again, who's he? He's just another part of you. So if we take away all those things and we just trust in doing whatever comes our way to do, number 4, and it shows us, then it's all this construct of, the Aubrey Marcuses of the world.
I have respect for Aubrey.
I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
Listen,
I think
it's
people
not
that
even
do
going
big
to
things with their
Yeah,
lives.
yeah.
Not that I'm putting them on a pedestal, but
No. You're more in number 1. I'm more in number 4 right now with that conversation because you're thinking, well, he's this person. I'm saying he's not.
Yeah.
I'm saying he's just a construct of a person. I don't know if he exists right now. I don't know if he ever exists. I met him. I don't know if he was real then. I don't know if I was dreaming then. So, I mean, again, when my question is why Aubrey Marcus? Because then you can find your map back to what is the desire that you want to achieve by having a conversation with Aubrey Marcus. Most likely, it's probably to get in front of his followers, because you will be able to get out there more and have more people watch you, approve of you, whatever of you, right? But there's an end goal there. So that's what I'm saying.
what would be the end goal? There's an end goal in everything we do.
Of course. So if you understand,
Dude, can I interrupt you with this?
That is going into, then you can understand, maybe I need to actually do that to fill that.
Right.
Or maybe I need to pull away from that and put the energy into number 3, for example.
But that's it. That's it. Mine is 3. I have realized as you were talking, I'm like, what is the end goal? Because you said there's always an end goal. For me, that's it. I just want to have fun.
So honestly, what is the end goal then for pretty much everybody on this planet? Honestly, it is number 3. It is. It's definitely to be on that 2-quadrant side of the brain, but it definitely is to be number 3, because number 3, that's when you go to a party and you have fun. That's when you have excitement. That's when you get to go skiing and you get to do stuff.
Not necessarily, because I like forward motion. I like,
because you're in your number 1 right now. Me and Gigs are in number. you're in number one, so we believe what we believe.
Okay,
You're
I
gonna
don't,
believe-
but see, hold on a minute, because even if it is the end goal, let's say, would be to have fun.
Yeah.
In the process of getting there, you still have to take the steps. So you still have to be number one. Reach
So
out
it
to
is
people,
balance.
do
I
these
think
conversations,
like
do whatever it
climbing a
needs to.
mountain or putting a course together, which
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
number 1 and 4. That is fun for me. That's
Yeah.
enjoyable.
Yes,
It's
yes,
creation.
You know, so it is 1 and 3 and
yes,
4.
yes,
So
It's
my
for sure.
goal is balance. My
It's-
goal is not
yes.
to be 3 all
Yes.
the time.
And it's
That
also
that gets boring. I've
Yes.
been in 3 all the time.
Totally.
It
And
gets boring.
100%. And also you do need 2 because you need 2 for the measurement. You
Yes.
need 2 for the memory.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So 2 is
Absolutely.
important too. It's
Yeah.
like you ever see those guys that are it's like a seesaw, you know, but it has a wheel and they have
Yeah.
to balance.
That's
That's
exactly it. It's
Sometimes
the
you're a little this side, sometimes you're a little that
It's the
side, right?
tightrope,
It
for
it
sure.
is it's just the balance.
Yeah.
And to understand, oh man, I have just been we talked to a woman yesterday. Man, was she so stuck in number 2. I mean, the pressure of number 2 tank was so extreme. It's like if we don't change this tank now, the pipe leading into it is going to burst.
And here's the thing too. I think where, you know, again, it takes away the judgment is even if I'm not saying if that's what it is, I don't know, only you know, but even if there was an underlying, well, if I get Aubrey on, then I can get more reach. If you believe your reach is going to help people, then that's a very strategic, great number 1 thing to do.
100%.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
You know, that's a good thing.
Yeah, maybe
That's forward motion.
right. So maybe if 5,000 people see it and it only affects 1 person, then really, why do you need the reach? All you need to do is get in front of that 1 person, right?
Yeah.
So maybe you're just clearing out all the other 4,999.
I mean, it's
people
a conversation.
and
It's a
direct
conversation in illusion, right? In illusions, where if you have like an audience of 10,000 people and you not reach none of them, how would that make you feel? I don't
Right.
care.
Yeah.
You know, because the message is
No
me
effect.
after all, somewhat, right? It's just for myself and for my own whatever expansion. So if I reach 1, then bonus.
Yeah, well, think
You know?
about it. The number 1 to getting to the 10,000 people, you have to do a lot of number 1 things. And then if you get in front of the 10,000 people and no one gets affected, you're going to go right into number 2. I did all of this, and now no one.
Nothing's
Yeah, but
happening.
I also think when it's balanced, there becomes that
A knowing.
connection with you that God, I believe God wants to serve. So that desire to want to serve beyond just serving myself is something bigger than I'm just going to sit here and talk to myself, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Desire to go, well, maybe I can talk to somebody else.
Yeah.
For sure.
It's raising that up from I'm just going to sit in 3 and please me. And that's it. I think when you evolve more into 4 and have 3 and 4 balance, that's the wisdom that then goes,
knowledge.
I want to push that out besides just sitting here having fun for me. I think it's a maturity that happens and it can't happen too soon.
Right.
Because you've been giving your whole life.
Well,
so then you have to go to the opposite of like, I just want to give to me. But then after a while, you're like, okay, this just becomes ego very easily.
yes. Because now you realize, you know, there's way more people in number 4 than ever in our history of this,
for sure.
you know,
For
this
sure.
number 1 structure, right? And I
agree
think
with that.
that's what's happening more and more.
Yeah.
This flow is really, it's equalizing the tank.
Yeah.
And it is at a very, very, number 1, number 4, it is at a very low level, but it is a level
Mhm.
that, because with that level, it can raise, it can equalize. And as this goes up, this comes down.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah,
like
yeah,
I'm just going to fill this one, because remember those gates down at the bottom, those things that you can pull, that as this one goes up, it's taking the energy from number 1 and putting it into number 2 as the flow on top is coming in equally to those tanks.
And imagine if we were sitting here talking about quadrant theory all day and we just wanted to use it for us. And we were just, we're 3 and 4, we're just going to stay over here.
Because we love to play with that. That's what she said. We love to. We really do love to be in that.
Desire to share that to help.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Do you see how balanced I am, that I can go
Right.
from a 1 conversation right into a 4 conversation and then bring the number 3 into the conversation? I mean, really a professional quadrant jumper.
In real life happening right now, That's it. We've seen it
Still
all,
time,
heard
baby.
it all.
Okay. All right.
All
This
right,
is it?
thank you very much. Yeah, this is
Until
love
the
it.
you
next
so much.
conversation. Yes,
Yes.
until
We
the
love
next
you, love you.
conversation.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank
Thank you
you.
very much for being here.
Love you, darling.
See you, darling.
Love you.